It starts the same way. Every morning, the alarm rings at exactly the same time. He gets out of bed without thinking, makes the same cup of coffee, takes the same road to work, orders the same lunch, comes home, sits in the same chair, turns on the same television, and tomorrow, he'll do it all again. Most people would call this boring, predictable, maybe even a waste of life. But psychology tells a very different story. Why do some men follow the exact same routine for years, even when nothing forces them to? Why do they wear the same clothes, eat the same meals, visit the same places, and avoid changing anything? The answer isn't laziness, and it isn't a lack of ambition. In many cases, it's something much deeper. You've probably met someone like this. Maybe it's your father, your grandfather, a neighbor, or maybe it's you. He doesn't chase every new trend. He rarely changes his habits. He isn't interested in constantly trying something new. To other people, his life looks repetitive. But inside his mind, that routine serves a purpose. Think back to childhood. Imagine a young boy growing up in a home where everything feels unpredictable. Some days are peaceful. Other days are filled with shouting. Promises are broken. Plans change without warning. Nothing feels certain. For a child, uncertainty creates stress. The brain naturally begins searching for anything that feels stable, anything that feels safe. As that child grows older, he discovers something powerful. Routines reduce uncertainty. The same breakfast, the same schedule, the same daily habits. They create a sense of control in a world that often feels uncontrollable. Psychologists have long understood that routines help reduce mental effort. When the brain doesn't have to make dozens of unnecessary decisions every day, it conserves energy for more important problems. That's one reason successful people often simplify parts of their daily lives. Not because they lack creativity, but because consistency frees the mind. For many men, routine becomes more than a schedule. It becomes emotional security. Knowing exactly what tomorrow looks like feels comforting. Every familiar habit quietly tells the brain, you're safe. That's why unexpected changes can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Even small changes. A different route to work, a new manager, moving to another house, changing careers. For some men, those changes feel much bigger than they appear, because the routine wasn't just a habit, it was an anchor. But routines can also become invisible prisons. Imagine living in the same room for years. At first, it feels comfortable. Eventually, it becomes impossible to imagine living anywhere else. Not because the room is perfect, because it's familiar. The human brain naturally prefers familiarity. Psychologists call this the familiarity effect. We often trust what we've experienced before, even when something better may exist. That's why some men stay in jobs they no longer enjoy, remain in unhappy situations, keep following the same daily patterns, long after they've stopped bringing happiness. Not because they don't want change, because uncertainty feels heavier than dissatisfaction. Ironically, routine can create confidence, but too much routine can slowly limit growth. Every meaningful achievement in life requires stepping into uncertainty, meeting new people, learning new skills, starting over, having difficult conversations. None of those things feel comfortable, and that's exactly why they help us grow. The healthiest routines aren't the ones that prevent change, they're the ones that prepare us for it. Imagine a tree with deep roots. Its roots keep it stable during storms, but its branches continue reaching toward the sky. That's what balance looks like. strong routines, an open mind, the quiet confidence to face something new without losing yourself. If you've kept the same routine for years, there's nothing wrong with finding comfort in consistency. Routine can bring peace, discipline, and stability. But every once in a while, ask yourself one simple question. Am I repeating this habit because it still helps me, or because I'm afraid of what happens if I stop? Sometimes, one small change is all it takes to remind yourself that you're capable of more than you imagined. Because the goal isn't to escape routine. The goal is to make sure your routine is building your life, instead of quietly keeping it the same. And there's another reason many men hold on to the same routine. It gives them an identity. Ask a man who's followed the same morning ritual for 20 years why he does it, and he may not have an answer. Not because there isn't one. Because the routine has become part of who he is. It's no longer something he does. It's someone he has become. Every morning reinforces the same message. I know what today looks like. I know what's expected of me. I know where I belong. For many men, that certainty is deeply comforting, especially in a world that changes faster every year. New technology, new expectations, new rules, new ways of living. Sometimes, routine becomes the one thing that still feels familiar. But life has a way of interrupting even the strongest habits. Retirement, losing a loved one, a child moving away, an unexpected illness. Suddenly, the routine disappears, and with it, a part of the man's identity. This is why major life transitions can feel so overwhelming. It's not only the event itself, it's the loss of the structure that quietly supported everyday life. Psychologists often explain that habits don't just organize our time, they organize our sense of self. When those habits disappear, people can begin asking difficult questions. Who am I now? What am I supposed to do next? For some men, those questions are far more frightening than any change itself. That's why many retirees continue waking up at the same hour they did while working. They still make the same coffee, still leave the house in the morning, still look for ways to stay busy, not because they have to, because the mind craves structure. Without it, days begin to blur together. Purpose slowly fades. Imagine a train traveling on railroad tracks. The tracks don't stop the train from moving. They give it direction. Routine works the same way. Without direction, it's easy to drift. But if the tracks never change, the train will always arrive at the same destination. That's the balance every person eventually faces. Keep the discipline. Keep the healthy habits. But don't become so attached to routine that you stop experiencing life. Try a different road. Read a book you normally wouldn't choose. Talk to someone outside your usual circle. Learn a skill that makes you feel like a beginner again. Growth often feels uncomfortable because your brain prefers what it already knows. But every new experience teaches your mind something important. You can adapt. You can change without losing yourself. The strongest men aren't the ones who never change. They're the ones who know when consistency is helping them and when it's quietly holding them back. So if your life has looked the same for years, don't ask yourself whether routine is good or bad. Ask yourself something more important. Is this routine helping me become the man I want to be? Or simply helping me avoid becoming someone different? Because routine should be your foundation, not your prison. It should give you stability, while still leaving room for curiosity, for growth, for unexpected moments that remind you life is meant to be lived, not simply repeated. Maybe tomorrow doesn't need to be completely different. Maybe it only needs one small change, one new conversation, one new place, one new decision. Sometimes, that's all it takes to begin writing a completely different story. There's one habit that almost every man with a long-standing routine shares. He rarely celebrates small victories. He simply moves on to the next responsibility. He finishes a project. He pays the bills. He fixes what's broken. Then he wakes up the next morning and starts again. Over time, life begins to feel less like an adventure and more like a checklist. Without realizing it, he stops asking himself what makes him happy. Instead, he only asks what needs to be done. Responsibility slowly replaces curiosity. And while responsibility is important, a life built only on responsibility can become emotionally exhausting. Think about children for a moment. They don't need a reason to explore. They climb trees, build imaginary worlds, ask endless questions. Everything feels new. Everything feels interesting. Somewhere along the way, many men lose that part of themselves. Not because it disappears, because routine quietly buries it beneath years of obligations. Work, family, mortgage, deadlines, responsibilities that never seem to end. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as automatic living. When the same behaviors are repeated day after day, the brain begins operating on autopilot. This makes daily life more efficient, but it also makes time seem faster. Have you ever wondered why childhood summers felt endless, while years in adulthood seem to disappear in the blink of an eye? One reason is novelty. The brain creates stronger memories when it experiences something new. When every day looks almost identical, fewer unique memories are formed. Looking back, entire months can feel like a single week. That's why trying something different, even something small, can make life feel richer. A new hobby, a weekend trip, learning to cook a different meal, taking a walk through a neighborhood you've never visited. These aren't just activities. They're reminders that life is still unfolding. The goal isn't to abandon discipline. Discipline builds careers, protects families, creates stability. But discipline without joy eventually becomes survival instead of living. Imagine planting the same seed in the same spot every single day. No matter how much effort you put in, nothing new will grow. Growth requires new soil, new experiences, new challenges. The same is true for the human mind. Every unfamiliar experience stretches your perspective just a little further. Every small risk teaches your brain that change isn't always something to fear. So if you've followed the same routine for years, keep the habits that make you stronger. Keep the discipline that gives your life structure. But don't forget to leave space for surprise. Because some of the most meaningful moments in life are the ones that were never part of the plan. Years from now, you probably won't remember every ordinary Tuesday, but you'll remember the conversation that changed your perspective, the place you almost didn't visit, the opportunity you almost turned down. Life isn't asking you to become a different person. It's simply inviting you to keep growing. Because the best routines don't trap you in yesterday. They give you the strength to create a better tomorrow.